That was intense. As you're all probably aware, Everest is based off a true story. It's simply about a climbing expedition to the highest peak of Mount Everest. A severe storm hits and everything goes wrong. Overall, it is about human survival and humans against nature. Quite honestly, everything I expected of Everest, I got seeing this movie, and I was thrilled. I had a fun time. It was intense, dramatic when it needed to be, and I got attached to most of the characters. Is it typical of movies of its kind with climbing Everest and all that stuff? Yes, it is. But I found it very effective and really good. Quite frankly, it is in my top 15, I believe, when I looked back to see out of the 108 or so movies I've seen so far. Like I said, I think I placed it somewhere in my top 15 currently. There is an impressive cast in Everest. You got Jason Clarke, Jake Gyllenhaal, Josh Brolin, John Hawkes, Keira Knightley, Robin Wright, Michael Kelly, and even Sam Worthington is in it as a very minor role that just comes out of nowhere, it seems. Now, if you probably don't recognize all these people's names, you've probably seen them in a couple movies and you just don't realize it. And when a big movie has a bunch of big names in it, you want the actors to be good in their roles, and quite frankly, they're all pretty perfect for their roles. Now, one of the things when it's a big ensemble of a great cast, you kind of worry about it. Because either they could go on the route where some of these big actors don't have enough screen time, or it could end up being so evenly screen time for everyone that it becomes unfocused and you don't know whose story this film really is about. Everest does have a fine, happy medium. There's enough screen time for all these big actors, but it's clear whose story is being told. The focus is definitely mainly on Jason Clarke's character. He's the leader of this expedition. He's the one that is bringing all these different mountain climbers, and they're paying him to get up onto the peak of Mount Everest. He's the one that doesn't want everyone to get left behind. He's the motivational person. He's the one that pulls everyone together. While the most focus is on his character, there are other characters that get fleshed out and get developed. Characters such as John Hawkes' character, Josh Brolin's character, and then a few others. Being that it is a big expedition, there are two expeditions in this movie. Because Jason Clarke's a leader of an expedition, and so is Jake Gyllenhaal. He's got his own expedition going. But because for this particular day, so many people are trying to get up to Mount Everest that day, they decide to work together, and so to make it less crowded and less confrontational with all the other groups going up on Mount Everest. Though their methods are different, Jake Gyllenhaal is the more laid-back person, the person who makes sure he gets mountain climbers that he knows can make it on their own, so he doesn't have to and hold their hands like Jason Clarke's character does. Because Jason Clarke wants to get everyone up there, and he makes sure everyone's okay. Just because there's so many characters in this movie, not everyone's going to get fleshed out, not everyone's going to be a rounded character. There are some that you don't get the motivations of or why they're even on this expedition. But I think you get a lot of it on Jason Clarke's expedition because Jason Clarke's ultimately the main character, so most of his team and most of the people that are paying him to get up on this mountain, their motivations are at least mentioned and they get a little bit fleshed out. What I think helps with Mount Everest is the first 2/3 of the film, you're pretty much just getting to know the characters. They are climbing, but they're taking time. They're not actually climbing straight up to the peak. They condition themselves. They go from, there's like 4 different campsites before you make it to the top peak. And for the first climb, they go to camp 1, go back down, camp 2, go back down, and they do it in strides. Because let's face it, Mount Everest peak, the highest peak, is the same altitude as where planes fly. And so man is just not meant to be that high. There's not enough oxygen. And so as you're getting enough interest in the mountain climbing and interest in how they condition their bodies to get up to the peak, you're also getting their motivations, you're getting more character development from all these characters, and you're getting to know everyone, and that really helps because once the third act happens, once the storm happens and people are dying, then you start to care about the characters, and that's what happened with me. Now let's face it, this is a mountain climbing movie. Many mountain climbing movies are the same. You got certain requirements, certain cliches that happen. But Everest did it very effectively, and even though there are moments where I know are cheesy or I know is going to happen, I still was affected by it because I cared about the characters. And I kind of wished I would have seen it in IMAX or just plain 3D because some of the visuals were amazing in 2D, and I thought it would have been even better if I saw it in 3D. The visuals and the mountain and how high up they were, it was really incredible and beautiful and terrifying at the same time. I think the one gripe I have to say about Everest is it ends abruptly, and I'm not talking about the third act. The third act comes, it was really intense, and I thought it was pretty long. I didn't feel gypped. I didn't feel like the climax was too short. The storm part was short, but there's still things going on after the storm, and it was grueling and intense. But the last scene does end abruptly. It establishes a shot, and you think it's going to be an actual scene, and then it just ends, and I'm like, oh, okay. Thankfully, before the credits start rolling, it shows pictures of the people that were on the expedition. It shows all the main characters. It says what happened to them. It explains a little bit of what happened after the incident. And you get a picture of all the people that ended up dying on the expedition, which you kind of expect from true story movies. Like, whenever I see a movie about a true story, I almost always expect a picture of the real person at the end of the film. It's just something we come to know. I really want to give it a 5, but if there's one thing that I can say bad about it, then I can't really give it a 5. And it's not me saying that there's something bad about it. It's just it's just something that I disliked about it, and I disliked that it ended really abruptly. I'm going to give Everest 4.5 stars. It's more like a 4.75 or higher, actually, but 4.5 stars. So have you seen Everest? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. If you haven't seen Everest, what is your favorite mountain climbing movie, I guess? Like, there are some out there. You even get the over-the-top ridiculous one like Vertical Limit. I watch that a lot. Everest is definitely the better film, but Vertical Limit is over-the-top dumb action that's really fun. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.